right? That's a set
Sorry.
no problem. That's a set of challenges that are distinct from our policy anxieties, right? Around the issues that we care about. It feels more existential, and it feels like not about policy. It feels about it feels like threats to the democratic norms and institutions that are part of the fabric of this country in ways that are almost irrelevant to our particular policy concerns and considerations. And that's a set of things that we don't have tools for. Like the Jewish community doesn't have a well-developed infrastructure for protecting democracy right now. The broader kind of American civil society doesn't have a set of those things. And this is back in 2016. Thankfully, it does now. And we didn't know what to do about that. So I ended up spending most of the time that I was at the foundation trying to figure out how to elevate those issues on the Jewish communal agenda through a portfolio of grants, helping to launch a number of new initiatives, convening Jewish philanthropists and Jewish foundations to talk about those issues, working on them in a bunch of different ways. And when I left the foundation in the summer of 2021, the board essentially asked me to spin off that portfolio of work and try to figure out how to build it in a way that would have kind of a sustainable influence on the Jewish community. And that's the genesis of A More Perfect Union. Which launched as a kind of fiscally sponsored independent project back in February of this year. The founding premise of the undertaking is that Jews in America have it better than we've had it anywhere else in the diaspora in the last 2,000 years. That's kind of a bold thing to say, but every time I say it, I'm convinced of its truth. We have built something kind of extraordinary here. Jewish community centers and synagogues and social service agencies and day schools and camps and advocacy organizations and an incredibly robust complex relationship with Israel. Like all of those things exist inside this the Jewish civil society that we've built here. And that the container that makes that possible is really a function of American democracy, protection for religious minorities, freedom of association, the rule of law. Those things hold all that we do and care about. And the guardrails, that container of American democracy, is equally important for the Aguda as it is for the Jewish Social Justice Roundtable. Right? Like the whole edifice, all that stuff that we do and care about lives inside that container. And if the last, 10 or 12 years have reminded us of some very important things, I think that they include that container doesn't take care of itself, right? Democracies are not self-sustaining, they require work. When stable containers in which Jews have thrived start to degrade, Jews are among the first to take it on the chin, right? It's no coincidence that we've seen a significant upswing in anti-Semitism over the last 10 years at the same time that we've seen American democracy degrade. And so there ought to be a way to mobilize Jews across the denominational and ideological spectrum to try to preserve, protect, and strengthen American democracy, if only out of enlightened self-interest, right? If only because we want to be doing all the other stuff that we care about, and we need the container to be intact in order to do it. So we started with that as our founding premise, and we asked ourselves the question, what does American democracy need most right now, and where can the Jewish community make a contribution, right? A meaningful contribution. We're 2% of the population, in some ways vulnerable, in some ways disproportionately influential. So like, what's our sweet spot? We came out of that conversation with two major priorities. The first is we need free and fair elections in this country. Elections are not the sum total of democracy, but democracies really don't work well without them. So that's our first major priority, and the thing that we're working on mostly in 2022. The second big priority is a much more kind of amorphous thing, which we're calling strong democratic culture. We need good civics education in this country. We need a commitment to pluralism that allows people to disagree with each other without hating each other. We need a healthy information ecosystem, right? All of those kinds of things that comprise the sort of soft tissue of American democracy. And we're spending a lot of time right now trying to figure out exactly where the Jewish community's role in supporting that is. That's stuff we're going to launch sometime in 2023. But I'll focus in this conversation on the 2022 midterms because they're 20 minutes from now and like an urgent and important priority. we assembled a group back in the spring. We assembled a group of strategic advisors, people who are experts in the democracy space, experts in Jewish community life, and very intentionally politically diverse. So Ben Ginsberg, who's been a lawyer for the Republican Party for 40 years, Mona Charen, who's a neoconservative political pundit, Yuval Levin, who's a scholar at the American Enterprise Institute over on the right, and Ibu Patel from Chicago and from Interfaith America, and Eric Ward from the Western State Center, and Rabbi Sharon Brous from ICAR in Los Angeles over on the left. And we worked with them over the course of the spring to try to identify concrete things that citizens and civil society organizations can do to protect elections, right? Not the stuff that Congress needs to do or state legislatures need to do or the courts need to do, but things that rabbis and congregants and JCC members and Hillels can do. And we filtered that list through the question of where the Jewish community has comparative advantage. Like, what are we well positioned to do? We came out of that process with 5 very, very concrete things that we've been working on. I'm going to share all of them, even though some of them at this stage, a month out, are no longer really relevant, but just so you get a sense of how we framed this work up. The first was working on recruiting poll workers. It takes about 1 million people to run a federal election in this country every 2 years. And after the 2020 election, 30% of the poll workers said they didn't want to do it again. Which is the largest drop off in poll workers ever. That was primarily a function of the pandemic, but also the Stop and Steal movement and the kind of anxiety that poll workers had coming out of that election. So we've been working over the last several months with an organization called Power the Polls to try to fill that 300,000 poll worker gap for this year. The second thing we've been working on is establishing new polling sites. 70% of college campuses in America don't have a polling site on campus. There was a report actually out of Chicago back in June that Chicago wasn't able to operate 73 precincts because of during the Illinois primaries because of a lack of physical infrastructure. Like the buildings that had hosted polling sites previously hadn't made themselves available. So there were 73 precincts that weren't in operation for the primaries. The third thing we're working on is recruiting lawyers to be part of a new national network called the Election Official Legal Defense Network, that's providing pro bono legal support for election officials who get targeted by frivolous lawsuits or whose families get threatened or who get doxxed. Like folks are election officials surveyed back in 2021, over half of them indicated that they were afraid to do their jobs for the first time. So we're working to provide legal support for them. The fourth thing we're working on is recruiting nonpartisan poll monitors. Those are the folks who when they do their work in person, hang out outside polling sites and make sure that the campaigns aren't electioneering, make sure that voters aren't being misdirected or misinformed or intimidated, things like that. There's also opportunities for poll monitors to do online social media monitoring for misinformation and disinformation and flag it for the online social media platforms so that voters aren't being kind of misdirected or deceived about election day and other information. And then the last thing we're working on is recruiting Jewish community leaders, primarily clergy, to partner with other faith leaders in their communities, build relationships with their local election officials. So go have a meeting with a county clerk, attend the logic and accuracy test that their county clerk offers for the polling machines, because those were a subject of kind of fraudulent dispute a couple of years ago, claims that they were rigged. All county clerks in America do a public demo of their voting machines before election day, and they're open to the public. So you can go and watch and kind of be there as a source of support, and also to be in a position to testify to the integrity of the process. So that's our fifth strategy. I'd say of these 5 at the moment, the poll workers process is basically over because poll workers need to be recruited and vetted and hired and trained. Polling sites is also kind of done, but there's still opportunities to recruit lawyers. There's still opportunities to recruit nonpartisan poll monitors, and there's still opportunities for Jewish leaders, for Jewish clergy to participate in these kind of support for election officials activities between now and election day. So I'll answer more questions, and I'll share resources through Rini with all of you about what those things look like. But I'll just offer a couple of last thoughts about this. What we're trying to do is, at least in this cycle, is to recruit public commitments from Jewish institutions to meet these needs. So far we've got commitments from about 85 Jewish institutions representing, I think, 14 different states, Reconstructionist, Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, and a bunch of secular institutions that have put a public mark out and said, in the case of Hillel International, for example, that they're going to recruit 150 poll workers and 150 poll monitors and place polling sites on 5 college campuses that don't have them. We got a commitment from Temple Beth Abraham in Nashua, New Hampshire, that they're going to ensure that members of their congregation meet with the county clerks of the 10 counties that Temple Beth Abraham draws congregants from. One of my favorite commitments is from a giving circle here in New York called Natan, that has committed to having 50% of its staff serve as poll monitors. It has a staff of 2, so one of them is going to be a poll monitor. But it's like the right sized commitment for that institution. And not only are these actions that Jewish institutions are taking meaningful on the ground in terms of bolstering election administration in this country, they're also a way for us to build a network of Jewish institutions that share a commitment to these principles and will endure beyond the election and be the foundation upon which we build the work we're going to do on democratic culture and on free and fair elections going forward. So that's our like immediate short-term and then medium and long-term interest in all of this. I'll stop there and be happy to take questions. And like I said, I'll follow up and send Rini after this meeting some more information that will give you the tools you need if you want to join us.
Thank you so much, Aaron. Charlie, you want to have a question?
Yeah, I'll ask the first question. First, by the way, I was on the faculty at Owen Sang Ruby in the 80s and 90s. Maybe I saw you and you were much younger, and I see Rabbi Prass. I remember you as well.
Weren't we all?
Yes, we were. My question is, it was just a quick point that you mentioned at the end, but the idea of public demonstrations of voting machines, I've never heard of this before, ever. Can you repeat that and say exactly what that is? And you think, is that in every state? Is that
every state? Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's a federal election commission statute that all county clerks, there are 3,000 counties roughly in the United States, and all of them do a public demonstration of their voting equipment. And those are called logic and accuracy tests. I'll see if I can dig up the information about I think I looked it up actually recently for somebody else in Chicago, but I'll look it up for when Cook County is doing theirs, and that's something that people can attend and see how the machines work, and it's part of the commitment to transparency on the part of the election administrators.
Well, if you're able to look it up for Maricopa County in Arizona, I would be most interested.
That I certainly can do.
Yes.
Can you tell us how to look it up for different counties?
Yeah. We've got,
Okay.
We'll send you guidance, generic guidance for how to look that up, but I'll
Okay.
also see if I can find for Cook and Maricopa.
Okay, because we have rabbis in other counties too, and
Great.
Okay, other questions for Aaron? David?
I think Charlie's situation in Arizona is more relevant than ours. I mean, we live in a pretty blue area. I'd be more worried about Arizona and even, places in the West that are even more red, or in the South. But in those places, there are fewer rabbis than there are, say, here. So
It's a big deal out here, David. You're absolutely correct. And my shirt gives away my proclivities.
So I think the question is, what can we do about those red areas where there are fewer rabbis?
Yeah. So I think there are a couple of things I'll say about that. One is that there are challenges to democracy happening everywhere. I live in New York State, among the most consistently blue states in the United States. Also a state that has, frankly, a pretty miserable structure and system for supporting voting rights, voting registration, and voting access. We do not have no excuse absentee ballots in New York. People have a very hard time getting early mail-in ballots. So there's a lot of work to do in New York. I'll send you, this is probably more information than you want, but I'll send you a report when I write to Rini after this, put out by the Bipartisan Policy Center, I think did I send it to you already? I don't remember that like Illinois is like good but not perfect on a bunch of things related to election administration. So I think there is work to do everywhere, even in the like deep red states, even in the deep blue states. And there are like I think there is always value in reinforcing the role of the faith community as an active part of civil society in support of the democratic infrastructure of the communities in which we live, regardless of what the kind of political proclivities of those places are. And the last thing I'll say is that there are opportunities in this kind of portfolio of strategies that we're putting forth that are not place-based, right? So social media monitoring, that happens everywhere. And there are opportunities for volunteers to be doing social media monitoring in ways that will impact voters in Arizona, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Florida, Michigan, Wisconsin, places that are, where the heat is greater than it is in Illinois.
Thank you. Another question.
Yeah.
I don't understand the particular reason to have clergy, and rabbis in particular, involved in meeting with the clerks. I mean, I'd rather send lawyers from my congregation to do that rather than go myself to that kind of a task. I'm wondering, though, what your thoughts are about engaging clergy to reach out to our rabbis, to reach out to other clergy and to work together in trying to communicate with the voters and to challenge the voter to be thinking about what's a conspiracy theory, what's really true, to differentiate, truth from conspiracy, and to encourage people to think more clearly about what's really going on here with democracy.
Yeah.
I think that's frankly, I think that's a more important role for clergy.
I think,
particular.
yeah, I won't comment one way or the other about which is more important, but I will say that there's a pretty robust consensus among pro-democracy activists and pro-democracy scholars that clergy are, along with veterans, small business leaders, local law enforcement, like part of the kind of essential civic infrastructure that can provide a counterweight to election subversion, distrust in elections, and so on. And the value prop from our perspective of having clergy build relationships with local election officials is both as a way of expressing the faith community's support for those folks who are under tremendous, staggering pressure, threat, intimidation. Sometimes that I think the FBI at the last check, which was July, the FBI was investigating 1,000 threats of violence against local election officials nationally, and that's just the reported ones, right? So having a rabbi and a minister and an imam and a priest show up for an election official who has historically been like this anonymous person who's now getting threatened online, and having those people show up and say, like, we've got your back, invaluable. Those people are leaving their jobs in droves because of this, the threat environment we're in. So that's the value prop in one direction. The other is the ability to say to the communities that all of us operate in and that you all lead, I've built a relationship with this person, and like I trust them. And when people are questioning the integrity of an election, like remember that there's a human who's the person who's in charge of counting those votes. That person is a civil servant. They've taken an oath. They're doing their job. So it's kind of a bi-directional value.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, sure. Richard.
Yeah. First of all, good to see you.
So good.
Great team. And the Legos are still there. My mom's still in the same house.
Oh, God. Love those Legos.
So what's interesting about this, and I know we're not all from the same movement on this screen, the reform movement as the RAC, which takes up lots of issues, including this. And what I know is hard for colleagues in all cities and locations is the Jewish community is not as unified in some of the issues. Whereas what's kind of exciting about this is really just about the one issue of getting out the vote, making the vote kosher. And to that question earlier about why are we clergy get involved, I think for a lot of our colleagues, if anything, this is actually the safest thing to get involved with political stuff. So I'll just sort of leave that as maybe a question, but for sure a comment.
That is certainly our hope, and we've been trying very hard to kind of make that case. I've had many meetings with the folks at Yeshiva University, with folks at the Orthodox Union, with some folks at the Aguda and at Chabad, who are like, I think Le'at are going to make their way here. Like they're all aligned and they're struggling with some of the challenges that their communities are confronting. But they're like the thing that's most reassuring to me is that they are aware of the precarity of institutions in an unstable political environment. They are aware of the precarity of Jews in an unstable political environment, and they care about these issues. I mean, I'll just say one other thing. I had an amazing conversation with a teacher at Yeshiva University a couple of months ago who runs a fellowship program for Orthodox rabbis at REITs, and said that he doesn't have a week or two go by without one of his alumni coming to him and saying, I don't know what to do. I have a congregation that's a third Biden supporters, a third Trump supporters, and a third never Trump Republicans. And they like the ways that their political affiliations are manifesting in their sinat chinam, like the kind of visceral attacks on each other. I don't know how to navigate. So those challenges are rife in our communities, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to do work to try to heal.
I have a question, and I don't know if there's an answer to it, but when you were talking about people believing in conspiracy theories, I guess what I lament is that there seems to be no address to tell people like, this is a news source that you can trust. Like when I hear someone say something that to me sounds crazy,
yeah,
my response is not to try and engage that, because I just don't know where to lead them or that they'll trust anything that I say. Yeah, I mean, how do you respond to that?
So that's the misinformation, disinformation, conspiracy theory, QAnon phenomenon is very live, and I'd say no one has come up with a perfect solution to it. That being said, there's amazingly sophisticated research being done on the tools that work. There's a whole flurry of research into pre-bunking, which is about like educating people in advance of their exposure to misinformation and disinformation in order to inoculate them. A whole separate set of research about debunking, like what do you do when somebody comes to you ringing like with that, I heard that the Democrats are doing X and it's not true, and like what the tools are for responding to that. So we're plugged into those things. We decided not to prioritize that as a focus for the 2022 midterms, but that will absolutely be a focus of our work going into 2023 and figuring out how to curate the best practices and resources that are emerging from the pro-democracy community and share them with leaders in the Jewish community so that you have those tools and resources.
Excuse me, that was my question before, but we didn't get to. I think that's the more logical role for clergy. I think if clergy together, Jewish and Christian, etc., would address that in a very public way, then I think people may trust to listen to what's true instead of to conspiracy theories.
Yes, 100%. And I think you're right, a distinctly valuable role for clergy to play.
And that's going to start more after the election, before the next election. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
I have a question. I have a question for you, Aaron.
Yeah.
Of course, in this meeting, the kind of more centrist Orthodox rabbis of Chicago aren't really members of the Chicago Board of Rabbis. But there is an organization called the Rabbinic Action Committee that's run through JUF also, that does, draw on these colleagues of ours. We know them because I've traveled with them for many years to Europe and the Rabbinic Action Committee. They're fine people, but they're not going to come to a Chicago Board of Rabbis meeting. Is there? Rini knows what I'm talking about. I mean, maybe all of you do. But is there a way of reaching them with your message also? Because they tend to be more, well, let's more supporters of Trump, frankly, stronger on Israel, and that's a major issue. But I know that they're also decent human beings who also want to be strong on democracy as well. So I'm wondering if you have any plans or entree into meeting with this group of more centrist Orthodox rabbis in the Chicagoland area, because if you could, it would be a good thing to talk about with them.
I could help with that too.
I'd be delighted.
Yeah,
I
maybe
don't have to, like, I feel like you all are in a better position to help me figure out what's the
Yeah.
angle. But certainly would be happy to have this conversation or related conversation with anybody.
maybe Rini can be
Yeah.
a bridge there.
Great.
Aaron, this is a more long-term question, but because I know you were in a congregation for 20 years. And I don't know how big your staff is, but in terms of training just teenagers on these issues, religious school kids that are going to grow up into a world that is, very different from the world that, I grew up in. I just wonder if you have thoughts about that, like for younger minds that are learning how to take in the world.
Yeah. So, again, this goes on the we're 8 months old and prioritizing, and as amazing as the two colleagues I have working with me are.
Okay, you're a team of 3.
But like what I think what you're talking about is like robust civics education, which has been in decline in U.S. public schools for 40 years and has been almost non-existent in religious educational contexts for a long time, and that's on our list.
I don't think we felt like we had to do it. I mean,
Right.
your statement that democracy doesn't keep itself going, honestly, to me, that is somewhat of a new revelation. I really didn't know that. And I think that's part of the scariness of this, is that maybe we took a lot of this for granted for a long time.
Yeah. From time to time, depending on the audience, I'll make comparisons between our election administration infrastructure and the sewer system, right? Which, when it's working best, we don't know. Like, it just does its thing. And, when you become aware of it, that's like not good. You want that to sort of happen in the background. But it doesn't. And I mean, this is, to be honest with you, this I find to be one of the places where my two passions in this moment, Judaism and American democracy, like really come into deep relationship with each other. Like, Judaism, same way, right? Like, we're not a static end state project. The Jewish experiment is one that requires ever renewing commitment, and democracy is the same way. We happen to have been alive, most of us, during an amazing 70-year run where democracy was basically a guaranteed growth proposition. Democracies around the world, both like each democracy around the world and democracies in general around the world, were on a steady upward tick from 1945 until 2008. That is a long time for a single political system to be ascendant. And so we don't really have a memory of a period when democracy was competing with lots of other systems. But since 2008, democracy has been in decline. 14 years. And that's, I think that's a wake-up call and an important reminder for us. Rabbi Berger.
Yeah, I just want to sort of reinforce what Rini said and what you just said, with a caveat, though. I don't think democracy has been on the rise for the past 40 years all over the world. If you look at Central, South America, Africa, there are a lot of places China, a lot of places in the world where democracy hasn't been making much progress over that time. But I don't think that any of us who grew up in post-World War II America ever imagined that we would come to the place where we are now. And it's really very, very frightening.
Yeah.
I think we all did assume that our democratic values in this country were rock solid. Despite the John Birch Society, despite McCarthyism in the early 50s, by and large, democracy was something that we all stood for. And it's very frightening to listen to people that I know sometimes. And you hear people in some of the Republican congressmen even say, you know, this is not a democracy. We're not in favor of democracy. This is a republic, et cetera, et cetera. So even the term democracy is now being turned into a negative in some segments of the political life of our country.
Well, and just to throw this in at the last, you know, at the end of our conversation, that democracy means that religious liberty is, you know, the very top, and that religious liberty for some people encroaches upon freedoms of other groups in schools, in, you know, in lots of spaces that makes us wary and really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So put that on your list too, Aaron. I'm sure
On my
there's-
list. All right, I had, when I was recruiting our strategic advisory, I asked my rabbi here in Brooklyn, Rachel Timoner, to be one of our strategic advisors. She was going to say yes anyway, but she said she would only do it on 2 conditions. One of the conditions was that I commit to working on it until 2040. So, so we're in for a while. I think we'll be at this for a while.
Great.
Yeah. I want to thank you. Really, this has been a great program. I just want to say before we close, it's really been valuable.
Charlie?
Charlie.
Rini, when you get the information, when you send us the contact information,
Absolutely.
the website of your association, etc. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I'll drop our website and my email address into the chat right now, just so you have it. And I've got a couple of other meetings immediately following this one. But Rini, by this afternoon Chicago time, I'll have an email that you can just forward to this group or the broader group at your discretion.
Okay, so just to confirm my to-do list, it sounds like the 2 things that we should focus on is seeing which rabbis already have interfaith relationships that could meet with election officials, meaning county clerks in different counties. Would they just basically send an email, a letter, a phone call to the county clerk?
So we've got a toolkit that can help people like sort that
Okay.
stuff out. I think at this stage, it's more likely that you're going to be attending some kind of public event that those county clerks are hosting, a logic and accuracy test or a board of elections meetings, simply because county clerks are for the next month are like accountants in March, right? Like they're not scheduling discretionary meetings. This is much more about showing up to support them in the public contexts where they're operating.
Okay, so you can help us find out about those events.
Yep.
Okay, this really has been invaluable, Aaron. As you mentioned, your love of American democracy and Jewish life that come together in this topic is, of course, so dear to all of us. And this is just a moment that we all need to be involved. So thank you for helping us figure out how to be involved in the most effective way. Thank you.
Rini, thank you. Thanks for hosting this. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. And
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Rini.
You are welcome. I will definitely follow up with, things that we can go to with other clergy just to show up. It's interesting what he said about clergy and veterans and local, police, that those are the spine, I guess, of our democracy, that when those people show up, people feel like, something else that Aaron said to me is like, when those people are around polling places, there seem to be real data that people behave themselves better, which is just, we should be there. So thank you, Ed. I know you've had a rough morning, and I'm glad that you could be with us.
You wanted to ask me about the meeting that I went to the other day.
Oh yeah, Ed he represented us at a Muslim gala dinner.
Oh.
What was that like, Ed?
Well, it was sort of interesting. First of all, because it was I'd never been to the convention center before, and this massive building, I had to walk quite a distance just to get from the parking area to get to the place where this dinner was being taking place, and ultimately found the place. I was welcomed quite warmly by the organizer, and I was seated at a table with a couple of people whose names I recognized. Father Palakowski was sitting right next to me, and the fellow Kaiser Khan, who was at the Democratic National Convention with the Gold Star family, who was trounced on by Trump afterwards, was at the same table. My big complaint about the event, and I voiced it afterwards in an email, was that there was so much going on from the dais that we really had little opportunity to converse with the people at our table. They had a place where they stopped the action basically and had everybody introduce themselves at their table and had some questions that we were supposed to discuss, and in 2 minutes or something like that, very brief period of time, and that was about the extent of it. And so that was a little frustrating that we never had to talk to people that were there. The program, they wanted us to be aware of a number of different things going on, particularly one of the Congress of Religions that's coming up, I guess, is it next year?
Yeah, the Parliament of World Religions happening
yeah.
in August.
Yeah. So they did mention that. And then at the end, they had a group of us, including myself, go up onto the dais and to say some words of prayer or whatever over this tree that was sort of representing the commitment to the mayor's program about canopy, tree canopy, whatever it's called, for planting trees throughout Chicago. Yeah, one of the things I found was interesting was someone sort of beat me to the punch, quoting Muhammad, saying something that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had said about him: if you have a tree in your hand and you're told the Messiah is coming, and so they have a similar statement, plant the tree first. And it was interesting that they had that same statement in the name of Muhammad. Or similar at least, and so I did mention that, and a couple other things in my brief remarks. I had 2 minutes. I was allotted to say something, and other people also had a few moments to say things, and that was basically the extent of it. I have been in contact. I guess I don't know if they originally had invited Bert Visosky to be there. So I know Bert from seminary, and Bert was in touch with me before and afterwards about it, and also he had not been able to attend, but I did comment to him as well. I can also comment the food was good too. They was a caterer, and they were very fast in substituting a vegetarian plate for the chicken that they had brought me initially. That which I felt was they were really very ready, able to handle that type of situation as well.
Thank you for going. Thank you for going.
No, my pleasure. It was interesting. I had once before been to their convention, actually, when they had met in Hartford, and they invited the local clergy to some kind of a gathering. It wasn't at the main event, but it was like one of the rooms at the convention. They had gathered a bunch of folks, particularly from the Jewish community, to meet with some of their folks. This is maybe about 15 years ago in Hartford. So, and I had been involved with the building Abrahamic partnerships, was they called that Hartford Seminary, which has a large contingent of Muslim students as well as Christians, and a fellow by the name of Yechezkel Landau, not to be confused with the Noda Yehuda, who had spent time in Israel and was active in trying to bring Jews and Muslims together. And he was one of the directors of this particular program that I think I was in the first group, first cohort, along with a fellow I later met. I didn't realize at the time he ended up being quite a prominent fellow in the Muslim community today. Is Abdullah and Tepli. Was part of that group as well, and he reminded me when we met again, some years later, that he was a part of that. But most of the folks who were going at that point were Turkish Muslims, and as he is. But
Well, thank you for going. Really, thank you for representing us.
That's I've been involved with some of these folks for different things. Interfaith is something I enjoy doing. And we do this Interfaith Institute every year down in North Carolina, and it's now fallen back into my lap as the chair of that particular that group, since my colleague Steve Sager passed away in May, and so we've been so I've I was contacted to be the chair and organizer of that program last summer, and we'll continue to do that for the time being.
Ed, what county are you in?
Kane County.
Kane County. Okay. All right. I'm gonna ask for Aaron's help figuring out when these logic and accuracy tests are happening in the different counties where we have rabbis.
That's
So,
interesting. I mean, Aurora is in 4 different counties. The way the county system is set up in this state.
okay.
So I happen to be in Kane, which is most of the western part of the city, but we're also in DuPage and in the other 2. There are a couple others on the fringes of the city that we're part of as well.
Okay. Well, I'll figure out the counties all around, and I'll get that information out
And
to people.
Maricopa County is the most important and biggest county in Arizona, and lots
Is
of
that your county?
controversy. Yes, Maricopa. It's the Phoenix. It's the largest county. It's the majority of the population of the whole state. And I would be very interested in going to one of these public meetings and with the voting machines. I think that would be fascinating, and if it's helpful, I would do that. And I do want to thank you, Rini, and you, David, also for the long distance remote inclusion from CAR and from CBR. It's very important to me, and thank you both.
Sure. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. David, you want to stay on for a sec?
I am.
Yes, a
Okay.
small lunch group of more liberal clergy. We get together about once a month and call ourselves the Heretic Society, because we're considering our evangelical neighbors who regularly exclude us from supposedly interfaith activities. We have to remind them, sort of elbow our ways back into these types of things, like an event that the mayor held the other day for 50 of us, clergy of all different faiths. We didn't even know we had Buddhists and Hindus here. And when we had Hindus, we knew about Buddhists in town, but we do have a Buddhist temple apparently as well. Who knew?
Got it. Well, thank you, Ed. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Thanks.
Okay. Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.
Bye. Hello.
How are you?
Okay, so this for sure overlaps with our
No question.
original conversations.
This is great today. I mean, really
I
good.
mean, he is at the center of the storm. He really,
Wow.
he is. And thank God for him and what he's doing. And I mean, we will,
Well,
I hope,
there's
you know.
overlap in the last question I asked him. I asked him the question twice. He answered in the end. He's going to wait till after this election. But I think the role for clergy and the role for rabbis,
yeah.
that sort of overlaps with things I have in mind about anti-Semitism. Stand up and talk. Stand up and explain who we are, what this is about. And that, they have to respect Jews as a source of Christianity as opposed to anything else. We have things to say, we need to say them.
Do you mean also talking about democracy, or you mean specifically
I think that there is an overlap.
Jewish?
there's an
Uh-huh.
overlap between our immediate problem, the threat to the Jewish community and the threat to democracy. There's overlap. I think he'd be an interesting guy to call upon later. Let's wait till after the election,
Yeah,
gearing up in this broader kind of thing I asked him about. I think you asked him
Yeah.
about it. And I piggybacked. I asked him, he didn't answer it. Then you asked a little bit, and then I piggybacked on that. And he answered more clearly. He's waiting until after this election, and that's more for the 2024. I
Yeah.
think that sort of overlaps with anti-Semitism. So what we're going to have to do.
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So I think today was great. I'm surprised there weren't more colleagues there.
Yeah, I got a bunch of emails that, people couldn't come and they were sorry, but you know what? I'm gonna write up a summary of what he said and send out the recording. I mean, I just, I don't make decisions for the Board of Rabbis by myself. We make them together. But I just think this is it. Like,
I'm
this
with
is
you.
it.
I agree. You know that. So I found my list that I.
Oh, great. Okay,
So let me just review the names with you. And then we
great.
see what to do from there.
Okay,
I have an original minion. The minion is Simcha Bob, yourself, Bruce Elder, Stephen Hart. Am I going too fast?
no, Steve
Stephen-
Hart,
Yeah.
he didn't come to the first meeting, did he?
No, but he was very interested.
Okay,
Okay. Deborah Newman Kamen, myself, Michael Siegel, Michael Weinberg, Michael Zedek, and Anna Rosen.
right,
10, okay?
okay,
You and I then talked, and we made a list from which we chose. I'll tell you the whole. Let me go through the list. We went 1 through 10 to double the size of the thing, roughly, the 9. And then there's some other people that we said would be possible also. And let me go in the order of the 9. Mark Rudolph.
Yeah.
Michael Schwab. David Wolkenfeld and Ari Hart. You said either. I don't see why we wouldn't do both. Okay.
yeah,
I mean, you want to do both, you tell me. It's not final. This is, I want your feedback. And then
Yeah.
Doug Zeldin. I think Doug Zeldin. Certainly.
why do you think Doug Zeldin?
Well, he has exposure on TV and everything.
Okay,
I'm happy for you to listen. Anyone you want to negate, fine with me.
well,
And you don't have to explain yourself. I don't need to know.
yeah, no, that's okay. I just think as we move forward, I want to think about who has a little bit of time and is going to give it, but who's going to be coming up with exactly what we want to do. And then the next layer is who are the rabbis that we call kind of first to implement what we decide we want to do.
Okay.
Like, I don't know that we need to make decisions with 20 rabbis, but I know who to go to, who's the first layer of stuff to start implementing.
Okay. Here's what I want to say. We're going through this because I want to rely on you. If you tell me strike that person, I don't have to ask you why. I'll just
Okay. Okay.
In a hurry, we have plenty of people. You want to strike someone, just tell me.
Okay.
I got Doug Zeldin as the 5th one here. 6th would be Aaron Melman. 7th is Shoshana Conover. 8th is Wendy Geffen. 9th is Michelle Stein, whom I don't know. That was the name you suggested.
Stern.
Stern. Okay, I can agree on writing. What denomination is she? What branch?
What'd you say? What's the last thing you said?
What's her branch of Judaism?
Reconstructionist.
That's what I thought. So that's 9 people. Also on the list that we didn't count would be Ari Margolis, Suzanne Griffel, Paul Sager, Leonard Zucro, Rachel Kaplan Marks, some additional names. But this morning, listening to this, the person who I thought had the most passion today, I think would overlap with anti-Semitism issues, would be Ken Berger.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about Rachel Weiss. She's in Evanston, and just in terms of amplifying whatever we decide to do.
Okay. She's also Reconstructionist.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, she does, I don't think, I would be shocked if there were any Republicans in her congregation. I mean, she's a JRC in Evanston. It's like the bluest of the blue, almost like more left than I am. But I think those are people that it's a very social justice oriented community, and I think they would get involved. So, I mean, the truth is, like, and part of the beauty of the work is it doesn't matter what someone's ideology is.
I'm not questioning. I just want to know who they are. That's
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, she's in Evanston.
So
Um,
there's a list here altogether of 17 additional people. That makes a committee of 27. Isn't that a bit too big for this?
to plan to come together and have a conversation, yes. I don't think we'll get anywhere.
So I have the original 10. Who do you think is really chashuv to include additionally? I think Mark
Mark for sure.
and Michael Schwab.
He won't come. I don't think he'll have the time for it. I think Ari Hart.
Who?
Ari Hart.
Give me a second. So you have that whole list. So let's go through that list again and let's just choose 5. So we have a committee of 15 instead of 10. We should do that.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't want to drop anybody.
No.
Mark Rudolph is 1. I don't think Shoshana is going to come. Do you? Or Wendy? So Michael Schwab, you say no. What about the Orthodox guys? Ari Hart and Walkenfeld and Zeldin. You don't want to have Zeldin, it sounds like.
Not Zeldin. I would say Ari.
Ari. So Ari Hart.
Yeah.
Okay. We got Ari Hart. There's one Orthodox person in this whole thing.
Well, we don't have very many.
Well, you got Walkenfeld. What's he like?
He just had his contract not renewed, so I don't think he's
Okay.
in a great place.
Understand.
So Ari Margolis.
Margolis.
I'm also thinking of people who are also not on the executive committee, because I think, well, Ari has a big congregation.
Remind me who Ari Margolis is. That Ari from Vernon Hills?
Yeah.
That's not such a big congregation.
What?
It's not that big a congregation.
No.
No.
Oh, okay.
It's not like Wendy or
No, it's not. I would say Wendy.
Wendy.
If she can't feels she can't do it, she'll tell us.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's see who else here. Aaron Melman.
He's going to Iraq for like a couple months.
Okay. Let me tell you the names that we didn't include so far. Let's pick one.
What about Paul Cohen?
You can do Paul Cohen. I can do Paul Cohen or Ken Berger.
I mean, Ken has more time on his hands. Paul has a congregation full of people that might, well, here's the thing. I mean, as I said, like, we want our planning committee, and then we want to know who are the people, to go to help implement.
Right. So we're talking, now we're talking the committee that's going to do the initial work. Right?
Yeah.
So what about Paul, Ken, what do you want to do? How about this?
Ken has the time, I think. Paul doesn't.
I thought he was very well spoken this morning.
Yeah, for sure.
I was impressed with that.
Okay.
So I have the original 10 now, plus Mark, Wendy, Ari Margolis, Ari Hart, and Ken Berger. Is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's add Paul Cohen. Okay? Or you say no? What are you saying? Not to have Paul Cohen yet?
I mean, we can ask him.
Okay, here's what I'm going to do. One,
I'm
two,
just, I mean, like, what do you think is the right number of people?
We have 16 already. Listen, we have the original 10.
Like,
Maybe
I would go with like 6.
all together.
Yeah, as a planning
Here's what I'm gonna
committee.
do. Here's what I'm gonna do. I will recontact the original 10. I don't want to just drop somebody.
No, no.
You and I, so that's only 8 other than you and me. So it's 8 people I need to call besides you and me. And
Add Mark Rudolph for sure, because he's the president and I think he,
Absolutely, absolutely. No
Yeah.
question. Here, let me say what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Besides you and me, there's 8 more original 10. So I'm gonna contact all those people, maybe by email, whatever, or I'll call them. And then I'm adding 6 people. I'm gonna say, do you want to really work on this hard?
okay,
Some of them may say no.
Yeah.
The 6 may say no, some of them. And out of the original 10, some may say, listen, I'm busy, I can't, I'm going where, I can't, I'm not interested. So just to review, we got Simcha and you and me and Bruce and Stephen Hart and Deborah Newman Kamen and Michael Siegel, Michael Weinberg, Michael Zedek, and Anna Rosen. We're going to try to add in, of course, Mark Rudolph, Wendy Geffen, Ari Margolis, Ari Hart, Paul Cohen, and Ken Berger. So we're going to add in 6. And if
you know what, wait with Paul,
wait with Paul.
Yeah. I mean, I think he would implement what we come up with, but I just,
So then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 new people, which is
Okay.
Mark, Wendy, Ari Margolis, Ari Hart, and Ken Berger.
Okay.
And let's see, I may, out of that 15, maybe I'll end up with 9 or 12. Let's see.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I want to wait till Yom Tov is over for sure. And then we'll call a meeting. And I think you and I should talk more. I want to work up an agenda with you. I think
Yeah.
it's getting worse. I really think it's getting worse. There's more and more publicity, more and more things. America.
well, I think the election is heating everything up. It really is.
Oh my God, I'm so worried.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
Let's you and I talk after Simchas Torah.
okay,
And we have the congregation coming, for Sukkot. I mean, it's crazy. Let
yeah,
me get through all of that. We have them to our Sukkah every year for dinner.
nice.
On the Shabbat of Kol HaMoed, or the Shabbat of, Shabbat of Sukkah, whatever it worked out.
Well,
Yeah.
I will follow up with Aaron on the logic and accuracy tests that people can go to. So, I mean, if we can just get that information out to people, I think that would be a good first step.
Let's
These public events that people can go to.
let's meet, you and I, set up a meeting like this. Let's do it by Zoom so we can see each other.
Okay,
On sometime, we can set it up now if you want. Let's set up a time for you and I to meet on Zoom, and we'll work up an agenda,
okay,
a bunch of stuff,
okay,
to figure out what we want to do. And among the main things I really want to do, what I have in mind so far, I mean, I have some big projects potentially in mind. I didn't want to tell you this for sure, but I'm meeting at 11:30 with the president of Spurtis about that program. I applied.
great. Is that Dean Bell? Who you mean?
Yes, yes. You know him?
Okay, great.
Have you met him?
Yes, he's lovely.
So he's meeting with me in 25 minutes. I'm gonna-
Okay,
As I sent the application in, I was chosen to be interviewed. So we'll see
Great.
how it goes.
great.
That's going to bring me a lot of information, but it's not starting tomorrow. It's going to start like early 23. So
Oh, okay,
I'll make a lot of contacts that way. I'll be able to bring in, whoever it is to meet with the CBR.
great.
That's Olive. But also, I think even until then, let's you and I think about who we can invite as speakers, not just to the committee, but as speakers to the whole. Like when Gary Zola was going to come, it was already June, and people were already traveling and stuff. It was going to be a very
Yeah.
out of the original 10. That's
Yeah.
why you and I made it a whole thing for CBR. We got 25 people.
Yeah. Okay, David, I'm supposed to be in downtown Evanston at 11:15, so I'm sorry, I'm gonna jump
Go
off.
ahead.
Okay,
We're
let's,
at about Spurtis Beinenu for now, okay?
absolutely, yeah, and
Okay.
I'll be interested to hear about your conversation with Dean Bell. I'm glad you're doing that.
And let's talk soon. And we'll set a time if let's after Yom Tov set a time.
Okay, good Shabbos and Chag Sameach and everything. Okay,
Gmar
bye.
Chatima Tova.
You too. Thank you.